Hello team, welcome to our tips, tricks and strategy video for 26.1. The CrossFit Open has just started. Hopefully we will see you on the leaderboard. We are about to watch Ed Haynes, Isabel Wolf and Skolk Vljun take on 26.1 in a head-to-head battle. We're going to get straight into it and we're going to be starting in 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1. The time is on. Now, joining me here in the studio is Toby Williamson. Toby, you also just got through 26.1 as I did. What were your initial thoughts on the workout?
Initial thoughts are make sure you have a proper warm-up. Make sure you lead into it really well. There's a lot of reps. I think everyone probably is doing the maths on the full amount of reps. Don't worry about that too much. I think the best way to look at this is it's a 12-minute AMRAP. So prepare yourself in that kind of way. I probably didn't do that well enough, which is why I'm sitting here struggling not to cramp.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely make sure you're prepared because it is a high volume of reps and it's very cyclical,
Yeah.
and repetitive in nature. So you need to be prepared for that.
Absolutely. Now, a few things that we want to think about. As Toby just mentioned, it is very cyclical, as in you're doing a lot of reps of the same thing over and over again, and also both the movements are actually quite similar as well. A lot of jumping, a lot of knee flexion, a lot of squatting. So the first one, in terms of like movements and execution, if we're talking about the wall ball itself, what are some tips and tricks that you can think of for the wall ball?
Yeah, so I think try and approach the wall balls how you would if you're doing, say, there's a big workout with 150 wall balls in or something like that. Approach with the same idea of how you're going to break it. How are you going to break it, and then what kind of style you're going to use. Are you the kind of person that leaves their arms up in the air? Are you the kind of person that tries to follow the ball down and bounce out of the hole? Just got to be aware of if you do leave your arms up, or if you are going down a little bit early, that's probably going to have a little more intensity on your legs or your shoulders. So it's possibly going to blow you up a little bit later into the workout. Or if you know you're a bit of a slower speed on that cycle speed, then you might want to look for nice quick transitions to that box to make sure that you're not falling behind because you're slightly slower in the cycle speed.
Yeah, nice. I think, a few things that you actually, if you watch Izzy, Ed, and Skolk going through this now, you can actually see there's quite a few chalk lines on the floor. And chalk lines, when you're in the heat of a moment, are really helpful to just allow you to step your feet exactly where the chalk lines are telling you to do it. Grab the ball, start the squat, and then you're basically giving yourself the best chance to hit that first rep. How many times do you see people launch the ball up in the air for the first one? It either hits too low or doesn't hit the wall at all. So chalk lines on the floor is definitely something that you guys can do just to make it a little bit easier when you transition off the box. Of course, number 2, like Toby was saying, it's like cycle speed. Do you try and meet the ball at the bottom of the squat? Are you riding the wall ball down into the squat, or are you catching then squatting? Of course, breaking schemes and stuff, we'll speak about that towards the end. But the actual wall ball itself, it's simple. We know that the more upright we can stay in the wall ball, the easier it is to execute the movement. The more neutral the spine is, the easier it is to breathe, the easier it is to lightly brace, versus if the hips are going back and down or the chest starts to fall, the ball's pulling you forward, there's way more tension going through the body and you're having to work harder and you're spending more energy per rep. If you look at Colton Mertens when he won it in the live announcement, almost completely upright at the bottom of his squat, just allows a more efficient movement here. Now, we look at breaking strategy, what these guys all used. I think apart from Skolk, who went unbroken on the first set of 20, Ed and Izzy both went with 2 sets of 10. And then I think they all just held sets of 10 throughout that. Skolk, again, set himself into an early lead. I believe we'll see towards the end that he'll be able to hold that pace and just keep moving just a little bit faster. His cycle speed's a little bit quicker. His squat pattern is just a little bit faster than Ed and Izzy. Again, one thing you touched on before is transition speed, right? How important is that in this workout?
Yeah, super important. I mean, even though there's high reps for segments, there's still a lot of transitions. There's still a lot of movement, and you're going to lose a lot of time. If you're doing really big sets, then coming down, resting, turning around, walking to your box, resting again before you get going. In addition to that, if you're dropping the ball and then leaving it and then walking back over and picking it up, we can save a lot of time by, like say, breaking those sets a bit earlier so that when you finish your set from the wall balls, you can turn a couple of smooth steps and then straight into your first rep on the box. or vice versa. You can come off that box and be able to walk straight over, pick your ball up and go again. The one thing I would touch on again as well, you said about the rep schemes and how you break it. I know these guys typically did 10s and repeated it, but for me, and it may be for a lot of people watching this, I like to go for descending rep schemes. So I might go for a 12, 10, 8, just because as I get fatigued, I find it mentally easier to go down a couple of reps rather than trying to equal that set of 10 every single time.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely hear you on that descending rep scheme. As we watch Skulk now go into the box step over, let's quickly first talk about the box jump over. So the box jump over, of course, you know, we need a 2-footed landing. A 2-footed takeoff. You do not need a 2-footed landing at the top of the box. But in terms of being efficient on the box jump over, what are a few things that you're thinking about when you're trying to be as smooth and as efficient as possible?
So for me, I think about whether you're turning on top of the box or whether you're doing that little bit more of a lateral box jump when you go, because you see a lot of people tend to do that spin technique. The danger of that is that they always end up rotating the same way. So you're always loading one leg a little bit more. And you often see people landing and being really, really high or standing up on the top of the box, which you don't need to do. We've got a lot of squat and extension in the wall balls, so we can find it a lot easier. If we watch Ed on the walks here, he's not actually standing up too high. He's just keeping that nice pattern as he goes over the top. I think Izzy's probably going to be the same. So Iz stays pretty level as she goes over that box. There's not an excessive movement going on.
Yeah. I think one thing to think about on the box jump over that I like to think about is that most people are not going to be jumping perpendicular to the box. They'll be facing the box, right? So we have like a slight angle. And when you jump with a slight angle, you'll always have a leading leg. So if I'm my right shoulder and my right leg a little bit closer to the box or closer to the box than my left side is, when I jump, I'm actually thinking about my right foot going towards the edge of the box. That basically lands half on the box, half off the box. Then as a left foot also lands onto the top of the box, my right foot slides off. And you'll watch later on when Skulk gets back to his box that on his, after a set of 18 box jump overs and 40 wall balls, he executes that really well. And that allows him to basically not have to stop on top of the box. He can basically slide off the top of the box. And again, you know, when people watch these tips and tricks videos, these are all definitely good tips and tricks to try and use. But if you've literally never done them before, don't try and build your entire workout around this. Try it in your warm-up. Does it make sense to you to try and do that? Is it an easy skill for you to pick up and then do under fatigue? And if it is, by all means use it. If you're trying to do it and going, oh my God, this is impossible, I cannot execute it, this is like really screwing me up, ignore it, leave it, and it's just something you're going to have to practice, unfortunately, for next year or the next qualifier or in your training later on.
I'd say this is actually something I did as well with the carrying the ball, holding the ball. So in my warm-up, I tried it one way.
Yeah.
And I held it on my shoulder. I was like, cool, this is good. I'm going to do this. But then as I started to go on, my shoulders started to fatigue. And so I had to bring that ball down in front of me. But then I was finding it gassy because I had that ball rested in front of me. So then I had the mistake of I hadn't tried both ways. So I didn't know the best one to do at the right time. So I had to sort of figure it out on the fly, which obviously isn't the best thing you're trying to do when you're 90, 100 wall balls into an open workout. So definitely, as well as a step over in the box jump with what you're doing with your feet, have a play with that ball and find what works for you.
Yeah.
Or what saves your legs the most, what saves your shoulders, what saves your lungs. So however you feel in that workout, you know what your fail safe is for that position.
I think, again, on that box step over, we're about to see all three of them get into it soon after a set of 66 wall balls, which I believe they're all breaking up into like set of 16 and then the rest of them as 10s. When they get into the box step over, so the two main ways that we see it carried is either up on the shoulder, as you mentioned, or in front of you, kind of like a bear hug carry. The on shoulder is, of course, easier in terms of executing movement standards. The ball never touches your legs, so you're not risking a no rep there. But generally, that does make you hinge forward a little bit more, and there's a little bit more going through the shoulders and the lower back. Versus if you hold it in front of you, like Skulk's about to go into now, he's holding it in that bear hug position. You notice he actually stays a lot more upright. But of course, now he's in danger of that ball hitting his legs. If the ball hits the legs, you get a no rep. It just also forces a bit more external rotation and a bit more work through the hip flexors and adductors. But those should be warm and ready to rock and roll for your box jump overs anyway. So I prefer the bear hug technique, but also, I mean, if you watch the live announcement, it was kind of like a half-half split there. And people were also chopping and changing between the two. It really depends what blows up for you. If you know your shoulders are generally the limiting factor for a wall ball, then you probably want to hold it in front of you. If your shoulders are totally fine, maybe your legs get toasted, maybe you want to hold it up on the shoulder so your lower back can take a little bit more. It really depends. But as you mentioned just then, practice both before you go into the heat of the battle, so you know exactly which one feels more comfortable. And if you do want to chop and change, it's a seamless chop and change versus like having a faff about with the ball. Again, transitions. This is somewhere that you can actually use your judge to help you. A lot of the time when we are getting full dummy mode, Toby, I know you went a little bit full floppy noodle at the end of your one, but that's when like we start to forget things. We forget that we have to go from a wall ball then into a box step over versus a box jump over. So using your judge to actually help you, remind you what you're supposed to do. Hey, 3 more reps to go. You're going to have to catch the ball and walk it over to the box. 3, 2, 1. You catch the ball, you walk straight over. That saves you in that transition. Doesn't mean you have to move fast, but again, the slower you move in transition, generally the faster you have to move in cadence to save time, which is going to be more work. Whereas if you can just be a little bit more efficient in transition, where essentially you're doing nothing, that means you can slow cadence of movement down, hopefully saving a little bit of energy throughout.
I've just seen as well, it's quite interesting watching Ed do his step overs there. You can see as he steps off the box, he kind of does a little hinge. So he comes down, both feet hit the floor, does that little hinge. He uses a little bit of a swing with that ball, same way that you would with dumbbell step ups. Just giving yourself a little bit of momentum. If that ball is in front of you, and that can be quite awkward to generate the momentum to step up, you can see he's just using his hips and a bit of rhythm to give himself that extra push over, rather than it being like a stuck in place or on shoulder strict step up, so to speak.
I think one thing now that we're getting inside the kind of meat and bones of this workout, it's like, okay, what is a good strategy? When we're looking at a pyramid style scheme, which was obviously teased on Dave Castro's Instagram, which basically means you start with a low rep scheme, go to a high rep scheme, and then come back down the other end of it. You're always kind of baited in to going hard at the beginning. Oh, the 20s, the 30s, and the 40s, and actually they're not too bad. 90 reps, okay, fine. And then suddenly there's a big old whack of 66. Everyone always gets kind of kicked in the face straight away when the 66 comes up. And then after that, we're going 40, 30, 20 again. It's just like survival mode at that point. So with that being said, it's like you have to almost start more conservative than you want to at the beginning if you want to do well in this workout. Just like holding on and being tougher and just, you know, gritting it out, unfortunately just doesn't work. You can't just tell yourself to stop being a wuss and pick up the ball. It just doesn't work, right? So breaking it up early like these guys have done is a good strategy. Whether you do that, like you said, with consistent rep schemes or with a descending rep scheme, don't get caught in the trap of trying to go unbroken just because you can go unbroken. If you watch the guys who did it again, Colton Mertens, exceptional at the wall ball, exceptional at the box jump over, even as a shorter athlete, completely crushed it. But again, super efficient in movements, and you know he can do hundreds of wall balls unbroken. So unless you're like him, who can do probably 200 wall balls unbroken, you probably shouldn't be thinking about doing this workout unbroken from the start.
Yeah, I think a good way to think about it is like it's 12 minutes, so separating it up into 3-minute segments. So you've got 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, 9 to 12. And our RPE wants to gradually progress as we go through that. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to move faster as we go through that. It might just mean that the pace we start at is nice and conservative. It's only like a 5 or 6 out of 10 effort. As we go 3 to 4 minutes, the effort it takes to maintain that speed is going to increase a little bit. So we're moving up to a 6 to 7 RPE. Then we're going 6 to 9 minutes. You might now be up at a 7 to 8. And again, you're still maintaining that same pace, same braking strategy, but you're able to maintain it because you were conservative at the start. Then you get to that last 3 minutes, and that last 3 minutes came around very quickly for me, but then stayed around for a long time. Okay, it felt like I was in those final 3 minutes for a long time, but you're able to dig in there, and that's just where you've got to empty the tank, and that's where you can push that little bit more towards failure on those wall ball sets, because you know you're at the end of the workout. Yeah,
agreed. I think now, as we wrap it up, we just see these guys all finish it up. Taking the win was Skolk Vijun. Then we had Isabel Wolf, and then we had Ed come in dead last in the heat. But having said that, you know, when you spoke about warm-up, I think some things that we really need to make sure that we're doing. It's a 12-minute time domain, which is like the most common time domain we see within the CrossFit Open. You got to make sure that this is an aerobic energy system, really. We've got to make sure that we have warmed up our aerobic system, whether it's on a bike, whether it's on a rower, whether it's on a ski erg, it's up to you. Get the aerobic system warm and ticking over. In terms of range of motion, we need the squat pattern as efficient as possible. We need the hips moving, we need the knees, the ankles moving. And the last one is probably the thoracic. If the thoracic is stiff and glued forward into a flex position, you're always going to struggle on the wall ball. So just creating some freedom and extension through lats, pecs, and the thoracic is always going to serve you well when it comes to a wall ball. Have you got any more thoughts in terms of what you need to get ready and prepped for this workout?
Yeah, I just think as well, even though we've said that it's such a leg based or leg dominant exercise, but also like do some pressing. Like I said, not only open up the thoracic, do some pressing, do some pushing through that shoulder. There's still a lot of impact. There's still a lot of volume that goes through throwing that wall ball. So don't just go into it thinking, I've got to warm up my legs, I've got to do plenty of squats. And then you get hit in the face with, you're at 50 push presses essentially.
Yeah.
By the time you've got through 2 sets and you're staring down the barrel of 40, 66 reps moving forward. If your legs are blowing up, you haven't warmed up your upper body enough, that gets very, very bad very quickly for you and you've got nowhere to hide. So make sure it's your whole body you've warmed up, you've got the aerobic system, you've got the lower body, and you're going in feeling good, as opposed to not necessarily what I did was a little bit underprepared, and then you're in cramp city and holding on for a lot longer than you want to be.
Absolutely. Okay, so to wrap it up, make sure on those warm-ups, warm up the aerobic system, get yourself feeling ready to rock and roll, but start smooth, start calm. Break it up from the start. If you know you can't hold on and broken, start with breaks. Stay smooth in the transitions, keep the cadence of the movements consistent throughout. You should be able to push more at the end of a workout versus just holding on, being a sloppy mess like this guy was on my left. Otherwise, good luck with 26.1, and we will see you on the leaderboard.